All right, let's jump right in. Today's deep dive might seem, well, a tad serious at first glance. We're tackling self-discipline.
And it's not about becoming some sort of, relentlessly productive robot.
Yeah, no finger wagging here. But Ryan Holiday's Discipline is Destiny. This book, let me tell you, it really digs into how self-discipline, maybe it's not about just checking things off a list, but actually this secret ingredient to, well, a more fulfilling life.
Totally. And you know what I find so interesting is how Holiday takes this idea of self-discipline beyond just like a modern day thing, for getting ahead. He ties it back to this ancient idea of temperance.
Temperance, huh? That does sound a bit old school.
It goes way back. Like ancient philosophers, the Stoics, Aristotle, they were big on this whole temperance thing. Basically, it's about having this balance, this self-control. Picture like a charioteer, right? Skillfully steering the chariot.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. So it's not about like denying yourself every little pleasure, more about being in control, making deliberate choices.
You got it. It's about choosing what matters, even when it's the puffer choice.
Not just getting swept away by every like whim or distraction.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of tough choices, Holiday tells this incredible story about Teddy Roosevelt. You would not believe this, but this guy, I mean, the picture of vitality, he was actually a sickly kid. But through sheer will, self-discipline, he totally transformed himself.
It's amazing, right? And for Roosevelt, it wasn't just about like lifting weights. He had this whole philosophy, the strenuous life, he called it, where physical challenge, pushing your limits, that was the path to growth. Not just physical growth, but personal growth, too.
Strenuous life kind of makes you think about how most of us are living today, right? Glued to our phones. Makes you wonder, are we challenging ourselves enough? Like, where's our version of that strenuous life in this day and age?
Good question. Even small changes, right? Swapping out some screen time for like, I don't know, maybe a walk could make a difference.
Yeah. Gotta get moving. So how do we make self-discipline actually happen? One thing that really stood out to me in the book was Toni Morrison, amazing author. This woman, she was all about that disciplined life, woke up before dawn every day to write.
Oh, yeah. That early morning routine, it's like a secret weapon for so many successful people. Hemingway, he was another one.
Something about those quiet hours before the world wakes up.
Totally. It's like a superpower.
Now, it's not just writers, though. Holiday also talks about Robert Moses, city planner, got so much done. And his thing, a perfectly clean desk.
Ah, clean desk. I'm with you on that.
Now, my desk is usually, well, let's just say it's organized chaos. But maybe there's something to this whole order, clear space, clear mind idea.
I think so. When your physical space is cluttered, it's like your mind gets cluttered too. Distracted, it's harder to focus. And focus, that's key for self-discipline, right?
Right. So a clean desk equals a clear mind. Got it. Okay, but what about those little everyday things? The stuff that doesn't seem that important on its own. Holiday tells this great story about John Wooden, legendary basketball coach.
Oh, Coach Wooden, such a
Yeah.
great example. He believed in mastering the smallest details.
For real. Like, he even taught his players how to put on their socks the right way. I mean, I'm still working on that some mornings.
But it wasn't really about the socks, right? It was about establishing this mindset of excellence,
Yeah.
even in the tiniest things.
How you do anything is how you do everything.
Exactly. And it all builds up. You start with the small stuff, you build that foundation of discipline, and then you're ready to tackle the bigger things.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've talked about the physical stuff, waking up early, tidying up, mastering those little details. But then there's the inner game, that mental toughness. Holiday doesn't shy away from this, and his example here, Queen Elizabeth II.
She's fascinating, right? Her whole reign was like a master class in self-control. Think about it. Decades in the public eye, all that pressure, and she always handled herself with such grace, adapted to a changing world, but always stayed true to herself.
Yeah, it's like she had this superpower. Stay calm no matter what.
Hmm.
Another thing Holiday talks about is simplifying our lives. He uses this example of Cato, the Stoic philosopher.
Cato, yeah. He was all about living with less, rejecting anything he saw as unnecessary, superfluous. He actually said, and this is a great quote, "Nothing is cheap if it is superfluous."
Wow. Makes you think about all the stuff we surround ourselves with today, right? Like, do we need all this? Or are we just buying into, I don't know, the hype?
Right, mindful consumption. Being aware of what we let into our lives, needs versus wants. And sometimes the most disciplined thing you can do is just say no.
Speaking of no, Holiday talks about Booker T. Washington, incredible educator. He was so focused on his mission, and he knew that saying yes to everything, it would have diluted his impact.
That's so important. Every time we say yes to one thing, we're saying no to something else, even if we don't realize it. It's about protecting our time, our energy, so we can show up for what truly matters.
Setting boundaries, even when it's hard. You know, another aspect of self-discipline that really hit me was this idea of patience as a superpower. Holiday uses Joyce Carol Oates, amazing author. She talks about letting her writing gestate, like not rushing the process.
Love that. There's real wisdom in that, isn't there? Not forcing things, embracing the long game, trusting that good things, they take time.
They do. So much of our world is about instant gratification.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked about pushing ourselves, setting boundaries, being patient, but how do we do all this without becoming like completely inflexible? Like how do we balance discipline with compassion for ourselves and for other people?
Such a good point. And luckily, Holiday addresses this. He reminds us that while, yes, striving for excellence is important, we also need to cultivate understanding, tolerance, especially towards others.
It's about the journey, not just the destination.
Right.
He talks about how Cleanthes, he came across this guy, and the guy was just berating himself, like really down on herself.
Oh, wow.
And you know what Cleanthes did? He just listened with empathy. And then he said this thing, it's so simple, but it really stuck with me.
What was it?
He said, "Fortune has not yet taken away from you the power to judge yourself."
Wow. That's powerful.
Right. Like, even when we mess up, we still get to choose how we talk to ourselves about it. We can choose kindness.
Self-compassion, it's so important and so often overlooked, And speaking of handling things with grace, we can't forget about Martin Luther King Jr. Talk about someone who embodied discipline, restraint in the face of, well, everything.
Absolutely. His commitment to nonviolence, even when he was physically attacked, that's some serious self-mastery right there.
It really is. He chose love over hate, even in the most difficult circumstances imaginable. It's incredibly inspiring.
It really is. So, after diving into all these incredible stories, I'm realizing self-discipline, it's not about being perfect. It's about that constant process of trying to live by our values,
Yeah.
even when it's hard.
And that's the thing, isn't it? It's not just about achieving some external goal. It's about cultivating something deeper. Inner strength, purpose, becoming the best version of ourselves one step at a time.
Exactly. And maybe that's the real reward of self-discipline, right? It's not just about what we achieve, but who we become along the way.
Absolutely. It's a journey. And like any good journey, it has its challenges, but it also has incredible rewards.
It really does. Well, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive, but hopefully this has given you some food for thought, maybe even a little inspiration to cultivate a little more of that discipline's destiny energy in your own life.
I love that. A little more discipline, a little more destiny. What could be better than that?